I want to show a small trick, or call it a pattern, that I use whenever I call an API from JavaScript. So whenever I call an API, I found this one, which is a dummy API. I get back a response, but I'm not always sure what kind of properties are in the response. And even my text editor is not following along. It cannot suggest me which kind of properties I can get from that response. So I want to show you how you can apply a factory pattern and basically just make it easier for you to work with the response of the API. So I'm going to use a Node.js project here. I'm going to install node fetch so I can actually fetch, because we're not in the browser, so we'll need it. Fetch equals require node fetch. All right. Then I'm going to fetch this API. Just copy over the code. And I actually think I'm going to do it the async await style. So we will make an async function, say fetch and print to do. We will then move this in like this. I'm going to say the JSON I get back, I'll save it in a variable. I will await this, and I don't want to log it at the end. Just move this in. Right. So now I can console the log JSON. And the thing I want to point out here is I don't know what the JSON actually is. There's no suggestion here, but I can still try and run it. Say fetch print and to do. There's no error handling here, by the way. We could implement that, but I don't think it's important for this, for the purpose of this video. Let's just try and run it. So let's go node index.js and we get the response. Nice. So what if I wanted the title? I'll go here and I'll say dot, and I can't remember, was it called title, was it called name, or what was the actual name of that variable? So what I want to do is create a function that defines what we get back from the response. This is called a factory pattern. So I'll make a function that's called create to do, and it'll return an object which will be equal to what we find here in the documentation. So it'll have a user ID. Wait a minute, this one will take an object, which is the one we get back from the response. And it'll map to the object.userID. And just in case that there is no user ID, let's say this API changed, we don't want it to break our application. So we'll say user ID should be the object's user ID or 0. So it will have a default if this one doesn't exist. We'll have an ID, object.id, similarly, or 0. We'll have a title, object.title, or an empty string. So if we bind this to anything, let's say it's an input field, something, it'll not break if it doesn't find this, and it will not default to undefined. It'll default to an empty string. Now our application will still live. So we also have completed, object.completed, or let's say false. Let's just move this so it's nice and clean. So what we can do now is say const to do equals create to do from our JSON. Then we can log to do dot. First of all, let's just see that it actually prints it out. So let's run it. Cool. So we can go to do the title, and we get the title. So I just want to prove to you that if we put additional properties here, it'll actually look for them, or it'll default to the value we provided. So let's say there was another one called, let's see, description. We say that should be object.description or an empty string. So down here, it expects a description no matter what. So if I just print out a description, we'll get an empty string. You see it here. So we have description as an empty string. All right, that is all.